Hey, and welcome to the Meditations and Musings podcast. I'm Elena Lipson. I'm a mama, I'm a wife, and I'm the founder of the Divine Self-Care Circle membership and the Virtual Retreat Academy. I don't believe that you have to sacrifice your body, your health, or your family in order to create true abundance and prosperity. I believe in living based on the divine feminine metrics of success, and these include pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. Each week, I'll bring you 1 to 2 new episodes. One of these will be a guided meditation that you don't have to do on the meditation pillow, and the other will be a conversation to help you access your inner wisdom, to ignite abundance, and inspire others to do the same. I invite you to join me on this journey back to the magic of a divinely aligned and well cared for you. And now, join me for today's episode.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Divine Self-Care Meditations and Musings. My name is Elena Lipson and I am your host, and today we are talking all about pleasure. Yep, pleasure is one of the feminine metrics of success. It is a portal to abundance. It's a portal to experiencing life on your terms. Pleasure is a birthright. And through our conditioning in society, pleasure can become one of the ways that you are taught to feel shame around your body, that you are taught to disconnect. And in this wave of talking about shame in terms of sexual misconduct, sexual abuse, all of the terrible ways that we can experience our bodies as women, from the demeaning ads that we see in TV and commercials and magazines, to all of the ways that people have the assumption that you want to be touched, that you want to be controlled, and it feels like pleasure has gotten caught up in the middle of this conversation. I want to give you the permission and to create a space of taking back pleasure into your life. And this is with the assumption that there's healing for so many of us to do around sexuality, and that there is a reclaiming of pleasure as a safe space, a safe way to engage in your body, with your partner, or alone. I want to talk today about why pleasure is your birthright and the G-spot is a myth. So about, I don't know, maybe a week ago, I was listening to this conversation about sexuality and women, and they got to talking about the G-spot, and it was some podcast. And I've heard people talk about the G-spot before, and for some reason I heard it in this very new way, this particular time. And I began to wonder, who the hell defined the G-spot? And why is it so important? And who came up with it? And why are we taught about the G-spot as this one spot that's the source of your orgasm? When I know, as a woman who has been with my partner for nearly 20 years, that pleasure is way beyond one spot on your body. So in case you haven't heard the actual definition of a G-spot, I went on Wikipedia and found this definition. I'll read it out loud to you so you can have a sense of what spurred this conversation on. So the G-spot, also called the Grafenberg spot for German gynecologist Ernst Grafenberg, is characterized as an erogenous area of the vagina that, when stimulated, may lead to strong sexual arousal, powerful orgasms, and potential female ejaculation. It is typically reported to be located 5 to 8 centimeters or 2 to 3 inches up the front vaginal wall between the vaginal opening and the urethra, and is a sensitive area that may be part of the female prostate. The existence of the G-spot has not been proven, nor has the source of female ejaculation, although the G-spot has been studied since the 1940s. disagreement persists over its existence as a distinct structure, definition, and location. The G-spot may be an extension of the clitoris, which together may be the cause of orgasms experienced vaginally. Sexologists and other researchers are concerned that women may consider themselves to be dysfunctional if they do not experience G-spot stimulation, and emphasize that not experiencing it is normal. So you might have sensed my sarcasm a little bit reading this because, pleasure and women is such a beautiful, flowing, large topic. When I teach pleasure and sexuality to my clients, to the women in my Divine Self-Care Circle, we spend an entire month on pleasure and sexuality. And we've been having this conversation for many years now. We understand intuitively, inherently, that pleasure is sourced from so many different elements in our body, in our spirit, in our mind, in our energy centers. We can be turned on by a conversation. Damn, I've had an orgasm just from, thinking about sexuality and being turned on. So the G-spot becomes this myth that a woman can have an orgasm by touching this one spot or having their partner figure out where this one spot is. And just for full disclosure, my husband felt like he needed to find it at some point in our, relationship as well. And it was so frustrating because he's like, am I there? Am I touching it? And I'm like, I have no idea. I can't see inside there. And even the stress of trying to find it means that your body is already not in being mode. It's in searching mode. It's in thought mode. It's in the left brain mode. And that's not where pleasure comes from, right? So I want to just dispel the myth that you are a machine with a button called the G-spot. And I want to help you to release the pressure around any one way of orgasming, and the fact that so many women are okay with not experiencing orgasms because they think it has to come from some specific methodology that they don't know how to do, or maybe their body hasn't figured out how to do, is absolute bullshit. You are a holistic being. You get turned on by conversations, by imagery, by smells, by being touched, by being thought of, by being nurtured. So the fact that some gynecologists, back in the 1920s or 30s, I believe, pinpointed this one spot. And it became, I remember being like really young and hearing it in movies and in reading about it in books and feeling like we have this one spot that gives orgasms. That's sort of what I thought. But when I began to experience sexual relationships, I realized very quickly that this is not the thing. This is not one thing. And in fact, there's this assumption that your pleasure has to come from a specific way. There's pleasure in eating food that's delicious and sensual. There's pleasure in living life in a certain way. Pleasure is a way of being. It's a sensuality that comes from a woman who's in her power, who's in her voice, who's in her life in a way that is intentional. Pleasure is your birthright, and not the kind of pleasure that other people define for you, right? It's about living in a way that allows you to claim responsibility for how you choose to live. So I want to talk about 5 distinct ways that you can reclaim pleasure as your birthright. And this is not limited to one sexual act. It's not limited to one spot on your body. It's limited to the spirit of empowerment for you, a consciousness around pleasure being a portal into a way of being. It's a way of tapping into generosity. It's a way of tapping into a deep nurturing of your body, your mind, and your spirit. For me, it entails dancing. It entails sensuality in my body. It entails being surrounded by things that make me feel beautiful. It means dressing myself in a way where I'm honoring my body. It means getting enough sleep. It means living in a way to where my senses are activated and not numbed because I'm too busy or hurried, or I'm defining myself by my goals or anything like that external to me. So the first way I want to help you reclaim pleasure is that it's your body. You get to define what feels good to you. You get to explore and you get to understand what pleasure means to you. For some women, it could be as simple as having their partner or even yourself be honoring of your cycles, be honoring of your needs, actually learning to speak it out loud. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. How about we try this? Or can you massage my feet? Like learning to ask for what you need becomes your own personal blueprint for pleasure. And this can take time. In fact, so many women feel like they have to contort into some external society structure expectation of what pleasure is. It's this porn philosophy of having to look a certain way and dress a certain way and be in certain positions in the bedroom. And that has nothing to do with defining pleasure for yourself. Pleasure can be a ceremony. Pleasure can be a ritual. Pleasure can be learning to feel confident with your clothes on or off. Pleasure can be the simple act of being present for holding your partner's hand, or it can be taking a bath with beautiful essential oils. You get to define it. This is your body, your way to pleasure. That leads me to number 2. Pleasure is a personal experience. It's so interesting when you get a group of women together and they start discussing sexuality. You can see that some women are super comfortable talking about it and experiencing it and trying new things. And others are very, very closed off because somewhere along the way, you learn that there's shame around it. I know for myself, I definitely got messages of shame around being overtly sexual or dressing a certain way. And I actually somehow picked those up. I don't know whether it was on TV or magazines or what, but I remember being very clearly, or looking at, tiny little skirts or wearing clothes that expose, connecting that with being someone who is asking for it, right? So again, that goes back to this sort of over-sexualized culture in the wrong way, meaning that we are over-sexualized at a very young age, but also it doesn't come without a price tag. It comes with a lot of shame. It comes with danger. It comes with women who are dressed scantily, who are then sexually assaulted. And in this culture, in this society, they get blamed for asking for it. Like that, those are the messages that I got growing up from the movies that I saw, from the conversations that I heard. Whereas women who are maybe in other cultures are not exposed to the same type of thought process. And so you can, have conversations with women from, say, European women or women who aren't in this Western culture, and they might not have the same associations with pornography or with dressing a certain way. Whereas, sexuality might be a more comfortable topic within families, within relationships, and so on. I mean, we have people who are afraid to talk about the menstrual cycle, who are afraid to talk about women's sexuality because it feels like a naughty thing. It's a very natural thing. And the more we can make it normalized, the more we can understand that sexuality can be whatever you want it to be. Like there is this, of course, this culture of women and shame and, abuse and violence that we are so normalized by watching these things happen in movies and TV that we can see why the conversation is just so heated. But it also shuts down the access to open conversations around pleasure. It also closes the conversations for young girls to learn about sexuality in a healthy way and what it means to be in a healthy, empowered relationship with yourself, with your body, with your partner, right? So this is definitely, this conversation can go in several different ways and can be several different podcasts for sure, but I really want to keep it focused on pleasure as your birthright in a very healthy, conscious, intentional way. So number 3 is you are more than one spot of your body. You are an entire holistic being. There's nothing more arousing than having a conversation where you're really listened to, where you're actually heard, where your needs are taken care of through the relationship in a way that is healthy, where it's not codependent, but it's interdependent, where you are explored as a playful partner, as a radiant being, regardless of your body size, regardless of how others think that you should be sexual, that you are empowered to be in a relationship beyond one G spot, that you understand that it's almost like women have this inner pilot light that is, we're like this slow boil, right? We want to be nurtured. We want to be paid attention to. We want to be honored. We want to be revered by the other person in our life who we're being sexual with. And it tends to be that sometimes, especially in a male-female relationship, there's this sort of, expectation of turning on a switch, and all of a sudden you have to be ready for sex, especially if you're in a married relationship with children. There's this sort of expectation. But women tend to not have that switch as much. We tend to be more of like a, slow boil all the time. Like you want to be hugged beautifully in the morning. You want to be honored and cherished and remembered and celebrated as far as, your birthday or anniversaries, or even just honored for being present for all that you do. So it really becomes about not so much the G-spot type of relationship with sexuality and pleasure, but more of the holistic relationship with pleasure, which is number 4, which is pleasure can be and is holistic, where when we can claim as a woman that you are worthy of pleasure, that you are worthy of slow sexuality, that you are worthy of being explored and honored, that you can become empowered in your own relationship to orgasms and sexuality and have a much more positive conversation around it, to where, I've spoken with women who feel even embarrassed to speak to their own partners about sexuality. And you might feel similar. You might feel like, I don't know if I can really ask for what I need, or I should just kind of go with the program, or maybe I can ask, for this, but not for that. Or maybe, like maybe there's an assumption that you're not even aware of, that you think sex has to be a certain way. But what if you want more foreplay? Or what if you want more talking before sex? What if you want more romance? What if you want more, physicality? You want to dance together? What is it that you want or need to step into that sexual relationship? And if you're not with a partner at the moment, then what is it that you want to give yourself? Maybe you haven't even considered creating a romantic environment for yourself, to where you start to really experience pleasure through all of your senses, through eating, through dressing in clothes and material that make you feel good, through listening to things or watching things that actually bring you pleasure, that where pleasure can be the actual ritual, not only when you're naked in bed, but when you are walking through life, that you can actually understand that your senses can be awakened by color and music and taste and sound. And it becomes a way of being in your body that brings you to the very present moment. And in that present moment is where magic happens. We've talked about being present in other episodes, and how being present is really that portal to everything that you want, like to inspiration, to connection with other people, to connection with yourself, it's like the antidote to distraction, right? Pleasure in the moment and being fully present is this antidote to this distracted culture that we are living in right now. And distraction is actually hyper present in the bedroom as well. I've experienced this myself. The women I've worked with experience this distracted way of being in the bedroom, where you might be in the middle of having intercourse or trying to have relationship, with your partner, or you are in your mind, you're already thinking about your to-do list for the next day. You're actually taking away your potential to experience pleasure in the moment because you can't seem to get present. We're so distracted that it's like the counter culture to pleasure, complete counterproductive activity to allowing yourself to be present. So what I like to do for myself is I actually develop mantras where, I was really honest with my husband about this. It's almost like I was so busy and so worried about my work and launches and things I had to do that I couldn't get present in the moment. That's when I knew something had to change. I don't want to live that way. So there's no shame in it. I wasn't wrong, but I was consciously choosing to not be in that situation. And so for me, it was all about getting into the present moment with a mantra. And the mantra that I chose in that moment was, I am worthy of pleasure. I am worthy of pleasure. And I started to slow down my breath and really be in my breathing and to look into my husband's eyes and to feel my body, not to disconnect from my body. And then there were some things that I had to resolve with myself. There were times where I wasn't happy with my body, or I was too busy thinking about my thighs or how I looked, or it would just instantly take me out of the moment. And your partner loves you, just like my partner loves me, and they're not as concerned about the physical things as you are. And if you have a partner who's criticizing you physically and makes you feel less than or less worthy than, that's a topic that needs to be explored. You are meant to be cherished and honored and loved just as you are, right? It goes back to that ideal of this porn star, of this sexualized version of a woman that needs to be a certain size and look a certain way. And guess what? All women have cellulite. And, if you're so busy worried about your cellulite, you're not experiencing the pleasure of the moment. You're taking away your own opportunity to experience the connection, this true connection with yourself, with this person, with pleasure. And pleasure is a form of receiving. So if you're having issues with receiving in other areas of your life, like financially or clients or friendship, it's really all hooked in together. You are one holistic system. So if you're having trouble receiving in the bedroom, receiving pleasure, being fully present for it, ask yourself, what other areas of your life are you also blocking yourself off from fully receiving a full sensual experience? So number 5, I already mentioned a little bit, but you are worthy of being nurtured and explored by yourself and with a partner. If you're not sure what turns you on, if you're not sure how you want to be touched, that's okay. No one's born knowing all this stuff. You have to experience it. You get playful with it. You get adventurous with it. Even if it's with yourself. I wonder what feels really good to me in terms of creating, a day for myself. If you had a day to create for yourself, what would you do? Would you go eat delicious food? Would you go spend the day with your feet in the sand? Would you go look at beautiful artwork in a museum? What would turn your senses on? Now, again, pleasure is not limited to a G-spot. Pleasure is not limited to an orgasm. Pleasure is not limited to the bedroom. Pleasure is a portal through all lenses of your life. So ask yourself that question. Take that time, grab your journal, and just say, what would a day of pleasure look, feel, taste, and smell like? What would you do for yourself sensually to ignite your senses? What would you want to look at? What would you want to be part of? What would you want to smell and taste? What meal would you make for yourself or take yourself out to? So just think about it. Think about what you would like to do, feel, smell, taste as part of a day of pleasure. That's your assignment. That's your takeaway. Because pleasure is your birthright. And the G-spot is a myth. Pleasure is so much bigger than a tiny little spot that's still a myth on the anterior wall of your vagina, right? It's all about being a person, a woman who walks through life with your senses turned on. So I invite you to explore pleasure as a path, a portal that awakens your senses. And then begin to notice, as you start to even notice everything that you're doing today, whether you're drinking your coffee or drinking water, are you slowing down to actually enjoy it? Or are you hurrying and distracting yourself through it just to get to the next thing? Because that way of living and that way of denying pleasure will also start to mirror itself in your sexuality. So that's the conversation for you today. I hope I piqued your interest in some way to explore your own sexuality, to explore pleasure as your birthright, and why I believe that the G-spot is a myth. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Share it with a girlfriend, share it with a few girlfriends, and then go enjoy a conversation all about pleasure as your birthright together. Keep exploring it. Keep challenging the norm. Keep questioning why we're supposed to or have to or should experience pleasure in a specific way. You get to decide for yourself. This is your life, and pleasure, again, is your birthright. This is Elena Lipson, your Divine Self-Care Mentor. Thank you so much for being here with me today and exploring one of the feminine metrics of success, pleasure. Pleasure as a way, pleasure as a portal. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Divine Self-Care Meditations and Musings. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much for listening and learning about the new Divine Self-Care way of being in your life, business, and the bedroom based on the divine feminine metrics of success: pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. If you're ready to bust the myth of overwhelm and tap into an inspired start to each day, I've put together a free video series for you to help you start each day with energy, inspiration, and ignite that inner pilot light which attracts joy, magic, and synchronicity. You can access my 3-step magic morning practice to help you ignite your inner light and attract the abundance that you're craving. Head on over to elenalipson.com/gift. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would so love if you share it with a friend, a sister, a mother, a daughter, and please leave a review. That is how the magic starts to ripple out. Here's wishing you a day full of beauty, magic, and divine self-care. I'll see you next time at the Meditations and Musings podcast.